On this Monday installment of Locked On Texans, we finally closed the book on the Deshaun Watson era here on Locked On Texans. Of course, with our guy, Brandon K. Scott from Sports Radio 610.
And before we dive into any of that, Cody, let's start the show off right. Start the countdown.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Monday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John, some sports guy Hickman. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. And joined by Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. An amazing conversation between he and Brandon K. Scott. So that would be very interesting. Interesting to say the least. But before we dive into that, Cody, just a quick news of what's going on surrounding the Houston Texans. Re-signed linebacker Neville Hewitt has 60 tackles last season. Came from the New York Jets. The year before with 134 tackles, really provided a great depth for that linebacker room. And so I would say this, as much as I thought Houston maybe should have made a priority for linebacker in terms of free agency or the draft more so, like they are really shoring up some of the pieces that they had last season. Look at Kersey coming back. I want to say Pierre Lewis was retained after signing a 2-year deal.
Kamu Grugier-Hill.
Hill, now Neville Hewitt, all of those guys who provided some great moments for Houston last season. And so defensively, the guys that really showed up for them last year, they are securing those spots moving forward with some of the guys. So they're going to run it back like Chris Paul. Hopefully they actually have an opportunity to play a full season with the Houston franchise, unlike Chris Paul did after he tweeted, "Let's run it back." But that's what's going on with the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and look, before we get into the Deshaun Watson talk, I do want to say I do like the fact that the Texans were able to retain majority, if not all, of their linebackers, because I think under the radar, that was one of the most stable positions that was out there on the field, especially by them bringing back Kersey and Kamu Grugier-Hill. I really do like those signings, and I think that's one position that might be set because, with the draft only literally a month away as of right now, we talk about, beefing up your offensive line. You talk about getting Davis Mills weapons. You talk about, of course, fixing the secondary and everything, beefing up the D-line even more. We don't really talk about the linebacking core, what they can possibly get in the NFL draft for the next, like I said, a month away. So, that's going to be real interesting to see how the Texans work around that. But, John, it is official. The Deshaun Watson era is finally over. As you guys know, on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, he flew out to Cleveland for the first time, passed his physical. And Friday, we actually had an opportunity to hear from Deshaun Watson for the first time since, I believe it was January 5th, 2021. And look, for those of you guys who did not get a chance to, just a really quick recap. As you know, Deshaun Watson's off-field troubles overshadowed the press conference altogether. However, he did have an opportunity to answer 2 quick questions about his departure from the city of Houston. He said at the time he felt that the organization and himself, given all of the things that he wanted to accomplish, they was, trending in different directions. And he said, according to him, that it was basically a mutual decision on why he actually had to depart from this organization. I'm not too sure about that, but it is what it is. And the reason why I'm saying this is the finale of the Deshaun Watson era, at least here on Locked On Texans, because like I mentioned, this was the first time we heard from the guy. And after he passed his physical, everything is set and final. So, John, before we start talking to B. Scott about the Deshaun Watson departure, Deshaun Watson press conference, even though the man did not leave Houston on great terms, I think when you still look at his first 4 seasons,
We leave him on no terms. the worst
still
of
think,
terms.
yeah, I think so. Honestly, I think he might be the. I mean, he ain't the first superstar to leave Houston. Hopefully, he is the last, but we know that's not realistic. But I think he might have been the worst to leave this city on the worst terms. Because I mean, you
Absolutely.
take a look at Carrera, Harden, even Chris Paul, a guy that's only here 2 years, even Dwight Howard, JJ, D Hop. At least they gave the city of Houston a thank you post at some point. Of course, D Hop took some shot in his, but we understood it. We still haven't got a thank you post from Deshaun Watson. But I say all that just to say, I do hate knowing that him forcing his way out of Houston, and of course the off-field struggles that came into the light after he tried to demand the trade. I kind of hate knowing that will forever overshadow his time here in Houston. But I just want to take a quick moment and say, yes, it's a bad breakup, terrible breakup in all aspects. But I don't want us to forget the first 4 years and the excitement, the promise, and hope that he brought here to the city of Houston. I mean, when I think of Deshaun with the Texans, outside of the nonsense over the last year, I think about one of, if not my favorite moment of him rocking that Houston Texans jersey, that playoff game against the Buffalo Bills, him along with D Hop and JJ leading that comeback. And probably one of my favorite plays of all time when he got out of that double sack. I every time I think about that, I be like, man, that's what Deshaun Watson was to the city of Houston.
Yeah, and I want to respond to Chris Romero. Normally I do this on Fridays, but I had to today. 2 hours ago, the deal done, Houston Texans trade Deshaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns podcast that we did on YouTube. But 2 hours ago, Chris Romero responded, "We will take care of him in Cleveland." Will you really? Baker Mayfield had three coaches and three offensive coordinators in 3 years. Are we really sure that Cleveland will do right by him, or is he talented enough to where he'll do right for Cleveland? Right. I would also argue that, and I would continue by saying I can see a scenario within a year the Cleveland Browns change their head coaching due to what Deshaun Watson wants, because I think that was a big reason why he left Houston, right? Did not consult him and go with a candidate that maybe he wanted, amongst other things that were taking place behind the scenes that we can't talk about. So I don't necessarily think you guys will take care of him. You didn't take care of Mayfield. You haven't taken care of any quarterback really in the last 20 years. But Deshaun Watson is talented enough to, get it done on his own. That might be the last of Deshaun Watson that we will talk here on the show until we play the Cleveland Browns. But it's never going to be the last of Built Bar. This is the time of year where I know a lot of people have given up on their New Year's resolution. No, we're going to stick to it, guys. You, me, everybody, we're going to stick to our resolutions by eating healthier, and we can do that thanks to Built Bar. And I'll tell you why. Eating healthier does not have to be boring. Does not mean you have to leave all of your treats in the cabinet, behind the cage, with one of those electrocuted locks. You don't got to do all of that, man. You just order a Built Bar. They're fluffy, they're marshmallow, and I'm talking about the Puffs, which is the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. And all bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, even the Puffs included. 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're better, guys. You know that. Those candy bars are actually nasty for you. When you look at a Built Bar, they contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to that candy bar, carries around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugars. You look at me, I'm black. I say sugars. 30 grams of them. And a dozen of those net carbs. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL. Locked On experts are covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with this Monday installment of Locked On Texans. As promised, we got our guy, Mr. Brandon K. Scott from Sports Radio 610. Brandon, what's going on, my guy?
Oh, you know what's going on. You know what's going on in the Locked On Texans world. Obviously getting ready for the draft and following free agency. But we we had another topic to cover over the weekend or into the weekend, and really over the last couple of weeks. So it's been busy times around here, man.
Yes, sir. And I know we normally bring you on Friday, but last Friday, Deshaun Watson, for the first time since January, I believe 4th or 5th, I think it was the 5th of 2021, he was involved in a press conference, and we actually heard from Deshaun Watson. Of course, everyone already knows Deshaun goes to Cleveland, and Houston Texans got 5 draft picks. And this is going to be like the closing section for Locked On Texans, talking about this Deshaun Watson trade and stuff, because we can't close it until we hear from Brandon K. Scott. So, of course, Friday, we all had an opportunity to listen in on the press conference that took place in Cleveland. And let me be the first one to say this, Brandon. I know you kind of feel the same way too. I wish that Deshaun had an opportunity to really dive into what transpired between him and the Houston Texans organization. We all know the story. He gets this massive contract in September of 2020, but in January of 2021, he demands a trade out of Houston. And of course, the reason why that got overshadowed is all of his off-field issues. So, Brandon, let's start off right off the bat. He had an opportunity just to briefly talk about his departure from Houston. He said that he believed him and the organization was trending in a different direction. What are your thoughts about that and Deshaun Watson's departure from Houston in general?
Yeah, I'm with you, Cody, on wanting to hear more or wishing that he said more. I do think, though, that he said all about what he wanted to say on it publicly, because he was given the opportunity. He was asked the question, and it was followed up on. Of course, we would have liked to have had it followed up on more if there were more of us there, given the time and space to do so. And I say us, I'm talking about Houston sports media press corps, Texans media press corps, like yourself, like me, like others that we know. If we were there and we were not, obviously these questions, probably there would have been a little bit more follow up on that. But he was given the opportunity. The questions were asked. They asked him why he wanted a trade from Houston, and they asked what changed for him after signing the contract, which I did think was an important question to ask and important to get on the record. He just did not really go into the level of detail that we would prefer. And I think to some degree, we just got to live with that. I mean, the man said what he said, and it wasn't enough, but it'll have to be enough. And then you got to kind of, what do a lot of people want to do? They want to move on from it. But it did bear getting on the record, and I think we got it, at least the whole we were trending in, even that part, right, which leaves a lot to be desired. We agree. Saying that we were trending in different directions is more than what we had. We had nothing. He hadn't said anything. So at least he has said on the record that he thought that they were trending in different directions. And then later on the follow-up mentions that that they were honest with each other. He said that I think a couple of times that he and the organization were both honest with each other and forthcoming and forthright and whatever it is, the direction that they wanted to go in, which I mean, you can just assume means that they, eventually obviously agreed to trade him and seek out trade offers for him, which is what he clearly asked for and wanted. It's clear to the to the eye, to the obvious, to a blind person could see that he did not believe in the organization. He had lost faith in leadership and in, again, the direction that they were going in, some of the moves that they were making, the decisions that were being made, and sort of the environment that had been created there over the last couple of years. I had kind of seen the writing on the wall in terms of maybe him not being totally all in even before he signed that contract. Deshaun Watson had done interviews over that summer, that COVID summer 2020, when everybody's virtual, when the world goes virtual. Deshaun Watson let loose a little bit and was a lot more comfortable in interviews with Michael Vick.
I remember that
on Fox, and he did another special sort of YouTube thing with Carmelo Anthony.
I remember that too.
That was sponsored by like a wine or some type of liquor or wine or something like that. And in those, he was very he was I won't say it was like, inflammatory comments, but he made it clear that there was some skepticism about the direction of the team. And I'm talking about those interviews being even before he signed that contract. And so people will ask Cody, well, why sign the contract if you don't believe in the team? Why sign the contract if you don't feel like you actually really want to be here? Well, you got to think about the position that Deshaun Watson is in at that point. The Texans have rights to him up until his fifth year option, and then they can franchise tag him for a couple of years after that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all he has. I mean, he is under team control without a a new contract. And so from his perspective, and this conflicts with fans and fan interests, but from Deshaun Watson's perspective, the only way to empower himself was to sign that contract, and then to subsequently put in that no trade clause to allow him to dictate the terms in which he might leave and get out of said contract. And so, from a business standpoint, Deshaun Watson's agent, David Mulugeta, played this very smartly from beginning to end, from negotiating the no trade clause with the understanding that the only way to get Deshaun out of Houston was to sign this contract that actually explicitly states that he wants to be in Houston or intends to be in Houston. Which again, people can feel how they want to feel about, but that's the reality of the situation. And so to me, in retrospect, particularly in retrospect, and I felt this way a little bit in real time, or at least it felt odd in real time, speaking to those interviews that I mentioned earlier, before he signed the contract. But especially now in retrospect, I think Deshaun Watson and his agency knew that the only way to empower him was to sign this contract, negotiate a no trade clause, and if things went south the way they felt like they would, and they did in 2020, they would try to negotiate their way out of here.
And Brandon, from the Houston Texans side of things, and maybe it's because everything that Deshaun Watson was asked during the press conference that had nothing to do with the Texans, nothing to do with what he plans to do in Cleveland. We all know what he has going on off the field as of right now. But from a Houston Texans side of things, how much do you think his brief statement that him and the organization was just going in two different directions, and in order for him to accomplish this things that he wanted to accomplish at that time in his career, he felt the best thing for him was to move on from the Texans? How much do you think that actually kind of played into the Texans' favor, knowing that past players like Charles Omenihu, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt, Randall Cobb, the list, Whitney Merciless, the list goes on and on, how former players, when they have that first press conference with their new teams and they ask them, what happened in Houston? Why do you think you was forced, or why did you wanted to depart from the Texans? They all had like something crazy and bad to say about this organization. As for Deshaun, who had the biggest fiasco of them all, him just coming out just saying, oh, basically they wanted to start a rebuild. I want to continue competing for Super Bowl champions. Do you think that kind of played in the Texans' favor?
Well, so a couple of things here. I think that in terms of the direction that the team was going in and the way that the team operated, let's call it from 2019 all the way up until recently, I think that we've got near consensus on something wasn't right there. Like the results speak for themselves, obviously, Cody. Like they went from a good team to a bad team very quickly there. And so you can take the results right there for what they are, and then on top of that, what the report, or not even reports, what you've had people say on the record, what you're alluding to with all of these former players, like you've got all of the evidence there. I don't think even from fans' perspective or people who care about this team, like I don't think there are any illusions on like what this was and what like kind of happened and how bad it got with the Texans. Like I think everybody kind of understands and sort of accepts that one way or another. However you feel, you kind of accept and understand that. I think with Deshaun though specifically, for one thing, as far as like from a strategic standpoint, I don't think he was really in a position to kind of get up there and really like start talking crazy. I think from a strategic standpoint, they wanted to be calm and not say anything beyond the fact that we were going to cover this thing no matter what he said. I don't think they wanted I think from a strategic standpoint, they didn't want to say things that would add kind of that would fan the flames, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't think they were trying to add any kind of fuel to a fire or anything. So it was always going to be something sort of mild in nature of what he was going to say. But as far as like how he's viewed and how the team is viewed based on his comments, I think there's still this, like if you wanted Deshaun to still be the quarterback of the team, let's say you're operating under that premise, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is this wish that he at the very least would have given Nick Caserio a chance since he was still on the team when all of that went down. Like, okay, you weren't happy with the direction of the team. You didn't think they were doing enough to win. You didn't think they were putting you in a good enough position to do the things and accomplish the things that you want to accomplish as a quarterback, your individual legacy. You didn't think the team was contributing enough to help that cause. Okay, now we're making changes. Now we've got a new person in here. You're signed up for the next 4 years, whatever it is, beyond this fifth year. Like you've just signed a contract. We're making the changes. We're trying to address the issue. Can you give us a chance? And then on top of that, okay, you would like to think that he would have been humbled by his experience, right? By some of his own decisions, putting him in a situation where, like, we don't know what Deshaun Watson did, guilt, innocence, like what happened in these different encounters. We don't know the details, but we do know that something happened enough to where 22 people felt it necessary to say these things for one way or the other. Like, there's a reason why he's the only one that anybody is saying this about. No one's saying this about you or me or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. Why? No one else is under these type of allegations, right? So, like, something happened within his own decisions to kind of put him in the situation where this whole thing happened that has not only put a stain on the very legacy that he's is supposedly trying to build on, and the thing that the Texans aren't doing enough to contribute to. Looks like you aren't on your own end doing enough to contribute to that or doing something to take away from that. Okay, so now we know that everybody makes mistakes, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
flawed. You're flawed. Why don't we try to figure this thing out together? Like, I think that feeling is out there, and that there's something to that, and that'll always be sort of a reaction to this. Like, why couldn't you try to make this thing work? Especially since you were signed on to do so. You were counted upon and thought to be the one to do so. And Deshaun got to make his own decisions for his own life, right? Maybe he just didn't want to do it. He didn't believe in it and wants to go somewhere else and try to figure it out. And again, he signed the contract, I believe, to allow him to be able to do so, to give him more options than he would have had if he had just said, you know what, I'm gonna wait it out and see. You wait it out and see, and you're a part of this thing for better or worse for the next however many years.
Last question before moving on, and I promise, last Deshaun Watson question, probably up until the Texans play Cleveland later on this year, and I just hope that that's the back half of the season so he can actually play if they don't suspend him for the whole entire season. But
Right.
how would you? Me and John talked about this a little bit in the first segment, but how would you best remember Deshaun Watson's quick tenure here in Houston?
Oh man, I mean, there are highlights. Obviously, his rookie year when he takes over for Tom Savage, and that might have been some of the most exciting times because that is when I feel like the hope and the optimism was maybe at its peak.
Mm-hmm.
Was in the very very beginning. Okay, and then there were some struggles I think along the way in his development, but I don't think the talent was ever really questioned. You could see it in large part because of the rookie year. But then, of course, 2019, for me, and I know 2020 was the year, like kind of like his best year, not even kind of, it was his best year. 2020 was, and the losing clouded that a lot. JJ Watt, famously at the end of the last game of the season said, sorry, we wasted one of your years. But 2019 just had these moments that I think were just surreal for me. I think about the Oakland game in Week 8 when he gets kicked in the eye and then completes the pass anyway. Despite and the kick in the eye was so peculiar because the kick, the cleat was able to make it through the face
Yeah, like it landed perfectly.
and kick him right in the eye in the middle of the play. And he had the wherewithal and the strength to endure that and complete that pass to Darren Fells, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And like that moment, to me, really, really just stands out. I was there for that. And man, just and even it's funny, even in the moment, I couldn't appreciate it for what it was because I couldn't really see. You have to look up at the screen to really see the close up of what was really happening. You knew he was getting kind of flung around. I mean, he was under duress and everything, obviously. Uh, but it was hard to even appreciate in real time that he was actually kicked in the eye in that moment. So I think about that, and obviously the Buffalo game, the second half. I can remember when they were down 16-0 at halftime, feeling like we at 610 were like planning for, man, what's this post game show going to look like? Them losing this game at home, to the Bills, and like how are we going to handle this? What are some of the things we're going to talk about? Like we were already preparing, and then we all know how that second half went. And some of those plays that he made, the sort of pinball play that he makes to get the ball. I'm trying to remember if that was to Tywan Jones or to Duke Johnson, whichever one of the running backs that was. Like those are the moments that stick out to me. That year, 2019, because that was the year I just felt like I was convinced that this is the guy of the future, and obviously why, going into 2020. You felt like, comfortable with, despite the 24-0 collapse and all that against Kansas City, you still felt comfortable with Deshaun being that guy. And so, I mean, that's really the thing that stands out. And obviously, like, those are the good times, but, I don't think anything's going to stand out more than how it ended.
That was my boy, Brandon K. Scott. We got more of him coming up. Of course, don't go anywhere. But I got to tell you guys about Athletic Greens. So I go to work, right? I'm going to work the last couple of days and got my bottle, shaking it up. Got that green stuff in it. Everybody like, what's going on? What you drinking? What you drinking? My coworker, Jay Johnson, shout out to him. He says, man, what you drinking over there? I told him it's Athletic Green. He said, I want to try some. I brought him a pack the next day. He actually finishes his before I even get to mine, right? He looked at me and said, man, you playing with it? I said, man, I'm going to get to it whenever I can. But he guzzled it down. He loved it, asked for some more. And I'll tell you why this stuff is so important, man. One thing about it is we don't always have the time in the morning, Cody, to get our day started the way we probably want to. Athletic Green helps with getting more energy. It helps with optimizing your immune system. And you can get that better gut health, which we all probably need here in our older age, right? We're not spring chickens anymore. With one scoop of Athletic Green, you're absorbing 75 high-quality minerals, vitamins, and whole food superfoods. All right, one scoop to get your day started the right way. And it's lifestyle friendly, whether you are keto, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free. Contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. And that's probably the best part about it. When you see green things, you automatically think it's going to taste nasty. No, not with Athletic Green. Not at all. And on top of that, it's expensive, right? We love this stuff. And you want to get on some of these plans, it's very expensive, not with Athletic Green. So to make it easy, look what Athletic Green gonna do. They're gonna give you 1 free year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreen.com/NFL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make sure you're listening to Locked On NFL Draft with Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker. They bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, continue here with this Monday installment of Locked On Texans. Of course, last segment we talked about the past, what was of the Houston Texans, but now we're going to talk about the future. And Brandon, I don't know about you, but I'm excited to see what the future has in store for the Houston Texans, especially if management could get their crap together, because it's part of the reason why we're in this situation to begin with, but that's neither here or there. But what I would say, the draft is right around the corner. We are literally a month away from the first round of the NFL draft. After trading Deshaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns, the Houston Texans sit at picks number 3 and 13. And there are a lot of different options, a lot of great prospects the Houston Texans can choose from. So, Brandon, who is on your radar as of right now?
So I've been on the record of one Kyle Hamilton at number 3 if
Me
that's what they
too.
do. If
Me
they pick
too.
at number 3. I don't know if they will. I think I've talked to you, Cody, about not really wanting to buy into the idea that you don't take Kyle Hamilton because you might misutilize him at safety under Lovie
Mm-hmm.
Smith's system.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if the players over system, okay, if the player is that good and that much of a difference maker, it is upon the coaching, okay, the coaching staff to utilize said player appropriately. So to me, it's not a good enough excuse that your system isn't like doesn't fit a talent that can help you win or significantly upgrade you at that position and overall that side of the ball, that unit, and therefore your team. So I look at Kyle Hamilton as probably the best player in this draft, just from my vantage point, from my point of view. I am also intrigued by like a lot of different players in this draft in terms of like the different positions that the Texans need. Like it's a good year to have a diverse talent pool within the draft if you're a team that needs a bunch of different stuff
Hmm.
like the Texans do. So like I'm not trying to cop out of the question, Cody, but I'm not like super greedy or picky. I should say picky on. I am greedy. I want all the picks, right? But I'm not super picky on like what they get and necessarily even who they get. So far as they stay true to their evaluations and do their due diligence, like we want them to do and have entrusted them to do, for better or worse. Like you want to have faith in the talent evaluators and that they're going to make the most of having 2 first round picks. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about, okay, who do we want them to pick? Where do you want them to go? I mentioned Kyle Hamilton. I'm also very understanding and aware of their desire to trade back, to trade these picks and to maybe accumulate more or to get better value with guys on the back end in the first round if they think those guys will be available. So I get that. And I was just looking at NFL.com just yesterday, how they have the Texans trading back. Like, so the scenario, right, Cody, is a team falls in love with a quarterback, Malik Willis, Kenny
Mm-hmm.
Pickett. They want that number 3 pick. They want to jump everybody else because they need a quarterback. And so like Carolina's 6, right? They need a quarterback. If you also need a quarterback, you're jumping up to go get it. If you're Atlanta, and you're not really trying to run with Marcus Mariota as your guy of the future, right? If you're even if you're Detroit, right? Like if you're looking at Detroit, they need a quarterback. Do I want to entice them for the number 2 pick? In order to draft a Malik Willis, if I'm that interested in a quarterback. You want to market for either a quarterback or really any player that a team is interested in getting so you can flip that pick. So I'm also interested in that to see, hey, could you trade back, like in this scenario that NFL.com presents, could you trade back to 8 and still get Kayvon Thibodeau? Since for whatever
Hmm.
reason he's fallen a little bit from months ago being one of the consensus top 3 picks, to now he's like at the back end of the top 10. Could you trade back and get a guy and still get a guy like that? Could you at 13 still wind up with I don't think Sauce is going to still be there. Sauce from
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, the cornerback from Cincinnati, but could it be? Could Derek Stingley Jr. still be there at that time. This mock has Kyle Hamilton falling all the way down to 7. So, I mean, there are just so many scenarios. I'm excited about it because I could get picky. I was listening to you guys with with Brian Bearfield, Big Sarge, earlier in the week, him mentioning that they need to get a wide receiver. I look, I don't feel like they just need to get a wide receiver in the first round. But
Mm-hmm.
would I be mad if at some point in this first round they end up with Drake London or Chris Olave or any number, honestly, any number of these wide receivers that Garrett Wilson, any number of these wide receivers that are at the top of the draft. Would I be mad if they end up with Jameson Williams? Like, no. I feel like the priority is defense, defensive line. If you can get a pass rusher, I really like some of the defensive backs, like I mentioned, Kyle Hamilton, Sauce, Derek Stingley Jr. I really like them. But if you can get a wide receiver in this draft in a first round talent, go ahead and get it. There are so many options. This is a time to celebrate and really just hope that the guys that have been entrusted again to make these decisions make the right ones, because this feels, I won't say fail proof. I heard you say something, Cody, not to get off in a tangent, but I heard you say something with Sarge in your objection to taking Malik Willis at number 3 overall, which I wouldn't necessarily do, but I want to just pick apart your criticism real quick on it, that about him not being a can't miss prospect. There ain't no such thing. Like, I know that we made that narrative last year with Trevor Lawrence about him being a can't miss prospect. I know we've considered guys to be can't miss prospects throughout the draft, but that's a false notion. None of them are can't miss prospects. They're all projections. Every single one of them is a roll of the dice. And so it's just a matter of whether you believe in Malik Willis's upside and what he can bring to your team or not. Not a matter of whether he's a can't miss prospect. Like, you can't get caught up in that, because neither is Aiden Hutchinson, neither is Kayvon Thibodeau, neither is Kyle Hamilton, neither is Evan Neal. Like, we think they're all going to be good, but none of them are can't miss prospects. And so you got to stay true to your evaluation, whatever that is, and go with your convictions. So, like, I'm open to really a lot of different possibilities and would be excited, really, to have a lot of different players in this first round. Really a good year to have multiple first round picks.
Yeah, and what I love most about this draft, from everything that I've been able to study, like I mentioned, I don't see this draft being and I know you just kind of like rejected the idea of it, like, the can't miss prospect, and I 100% agree. I've always said the draft, no matter the sport, the league, is nothing but a gamble, unless you're LeBron James or somebody like
Yep,
that,
that was the
you
case.
already
Yep.
know,
That
that you
was the can't
already
miss
know is
prospect.
going to like transcend everything. But like I say, you look at a guy like Jamal Russell. Was he like the first round pick? A first round pick in, I think, 2007. Look how he played out.
Oh,
Then you got
Jamarcus Russell.
Jamarcus Russell. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was a first round pick. Look how that played out. Then you got Tom Brady, who went on to become arguably the greatest player in this sport, and he was a 6th round pick. I understand the draft is nothing but a big gamble. But what I would say, and this is part of the reason why I do like the idea of them giving Davis Mills another opportunity, because you kind of have a thought that Davis Mills could be your future. It gives you an opportunity to go out there and get a wide receiver, go out there and get a defensive back, go out there and get somebody on the defensive line, offensive, or whatever the case might be. Like, I believe this draft is just filled with a lot of talented guys that can add depth to your organization. Now, Brandon, with that being said, you mentioned something I want to hit on really quick. You talked about the guys that we are trusting in this organization to pick these guys and develop these guys. How much faith do you have in Nick Caserio and his scouting department to make sure he hit on these draft picks, especially considering that last year, we all know the story, had arguably the worst draft capital entering the draft, and he came away with 5 really good prospects, and one in Davis Mills can really be something special if he continues to develop the right way.
Yeah, and I want to correct something if I said it wrong about we are trusting. What I mean is the guys that are interested. So, like, that's their job. Not to say necessarily that we trust them to do it correctly. Just to be clear on what the stance is, in case I misstated that. And I think I might have, the way I said it, like, we are trusting. They have been interested because that is the job that they do. whether we trust him or not is a whole nother different topic and discussion, right? And that
Yeah.
speaks to your question that you were asking. And look, let's be fair, right? The limited draft capital that you talk about, that you ask about, right, or mention. With that, they did do well. They did draft to value, I think, for what they had. Like, I think getting or Davis Mills and Nico Collins in the third round, even if you had to trade up, even if you had to give something up to get Nico Collins, I think those were smart plays, good value picks in the third round for what they look like they are going to be, or could be, I should say, based on their rookie year, right? And then you go from there with obviously the Brevin Jordans and Garrett Wallows, and of course Roy Lopez being a starter for you from almost day one. And looking like he could be even from training camp. Like we could see that, that, hey, this guy really doesn't take a backseat to anybody based off of what we're looking at in the interior line. Like Malik Collins is probably the best guy. And after that, you can roll Roy Lopez in there with any of the rest of them that you got. Ross Blacklock, Jaleel Johnson, Vincent Taylor, and anybody else included that you had in the mix, right? So that was cool. Based off of that, based off of the limited results that you got, I feel like you can't really knock what you've seen so far. Now, is what you've seen so far enough to say that you've got faith in it based off of what the totality of the last few years have been? Even considering that Nick Caserio is not associated with all of it, there are some things to pick apart, right? Look, there is room and reason for skepticism still, I think. But if you're being fair and basing it off of the limited results and sample sizes you got so far, I think you can feel good about having more resources, okay, and hoping that you do just as well with those as you did with the limited ones. And then again, to the point that I made earlier about there being not a foolproof draft, but like not top end, you feel like generational talent, can't miss prospect type of narrative. You don't have that about any of these guys. But what you do have is a deep draft of a lot of solid prospects where you look at them and you're like, yeah, you know what? That guy could be a solid pro all the way down the mock. Like, look at the mock drafts. And there's not many guys on there that I'm looking at and I'm like, man, that would be a bad pick. Like you don't, you see what I'm saying, Cody? Like, you don't feel that way about any one guy where you're like, man, you just got to go get that guy. No, I mentioned Kyle Hamilton earlier. I do feel that sort of close to that way about him. But I look at the mock and I'm like, yeah, sure. Sign me up. Like I just go up and down the list, and I'm good with it. So from that regard, I feel like that works into the Texans' favor. It's like, hey, be smart with your picks. Like if you can get some value and trade back and still feel like you can get really good players, some foundational pieces and like instant contributors to your team. Yeah, man. I mean, this is an opportunity really for the Texans where, things have kind of just fallen into place for them.
Brandon K. Scott from Sports Radio 16. Brandon, really quick, where can our listeners follow you at on social media?
Yeah, man, at Brandon K. Scott on Twitter. That's where you can find me and sort of keep up with whatever it is I'm doing. Doing a number of things, obviously, primarily at Sports Radio 610. So check us out there in the B Block podcast every week. Just follow me at Brandon K. Scott and you can get everything that's going on from there.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. And please be sure to follow my co-host, John Sun Sports Guy Hickman at John. I think it's Hickman_12 or John Hickman_12.
Oh man, we gotta get John. Oh man, we gotta get John. He changed it though, didn't he?
Yeah, he changed it because it used to be some sports guy. Hold on, let me make sure I get my boy right.
Yeah, I'm finna say we can't do John like that. Like I think we got his Twitter right. I'm finna look it up too. Hold on, I got you, John.
Okay, I was right the first time. It's John_Hickman12. Once again, that's John_Hickman12. I see that. I see it every day, so
confirm. I'm gonna confirm your report.
Awesome, man. But appreciate you, Brandon, from stopping by. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.